You're welcome to my channel. Thank you for clicking on this video. So today we'll be making a gypsy skirt, like you can see on the screen. Yes, gypsy skirt. So I will show you how to cut the layers or the tiers from your fabric. I have 6 yards of African print here. So I want to say a very big welcome to you, all my old subscribers. Thank you for always coming back, and if you're new to this channel, you are welcome. Please join this wonderful family by subscribing. It is free. Just hit on the subscribe button below and turn on the bell beside it so that you'll be part of this wonderful family and you will not miss out on any of our new uploads. Now let's move straight to the lesson of the day without taking so much time. And what I have here is just an illustration, or I want to explain to you how you cut this on your fabric. So don't be afraid of what you're seeing here. It is very, very simple. I will explain this to you. So the measurements we'll be making use of here are the hip circumference and the length of your skirt. Okay, so the hip circumference here is 44 and the length of the skirt I'm making is 40. Okay, so let's start with the width of our skirt, that is width of each tier. We'll have the first, the second, and the third tier. Okay, so you can see the figures I have here. You might be wondering how I came about these figures. So this is how I did it. The skirt I want to make, the gypsy skirt, I want the first tier to be around the hip area, and here the hip point of the client is 8 inches. Okay, it's 8 inches. So I want it to be like 1 inch under the hip points, just 1 inch from the hip points. Okay, so that is why I made it 9. That's why I took 9 inches. That is the length of the first tier. Then the second tier, I want it to get to the nail point. So the measurement, the nail point of the client from the waist to the nail is 22 inches. And you'll be wondering how I got 13 here. Don't worry, I will show you that. And the total length of the skirt is 40 inches. And I have 18 here. How did I get it? That I would explain. Now, let me explain it to you. This is my tape. Okay? I said the full length of the skirt is 40 inches. So I have from 1 to 40. Now, I said the first tier would be, it will be around the hip area, right? So the hip point of the client is 8 inches. I just added 1 inch, so it will be 9 inches. So the first tier is settled. You already understand this one. From the waist to 1 inch after the hip point. That is the length of the first tier. Okay, so for the second tier, how did I get 13? This is it. I said the nail point, I want it to be around the nail point, right? So from the client's waist, from the waist to the nail, measures 22 inches. 22 inches. So on my tape now, so I'm making use of 2 tapes so that I can explain this well to you. From 1 to 9 is the first tier. So from 9 to 22 is the second tier. Okay, from 9 to the nail point, which is 22, is the second tier. So what you will do is just to measure what you have from that point. From 9 to 22, what do you have there? I have 13 inches, okay, approximately 13 inches. As you can see, from that 9 inches to 22 inches, which is the nail point, what I have there is 13 inches. And that is it here, okay? That is the distance from this side to this side is 13 inches. Now, for the third tier, I have 18. How did I get that? Remember, we've taken the first tier, we've taken the second tier, which stops at 22. So from that 22, you measure to the full length of the skirt. And what I have there, I said the full length is 40, right? So from this 22 to that 40, what I have there is approximately 18 inches. Okay, when I place my tape very well, what I have there is 18 inches. So this is the length of the third tier, and this is what I have here, as you can see. So I have 9, 13, 18. Now I added 1 inch to each of them. I added 1 inch. The reason is this: you're going to join the first tier to either the band or to the bodice if you're making a gown. So you're going to join it here by ½ inch, and you're going to join the first tier to the second tier by ½ inch. ½ inch plus ½ inch, that is 1 inch. So that is why I'm adding 1 inch to it. Same with this. You're going to join the second tier to the first tier and to the third tier. So you need ½ inch here and ½ inch here. That is why I added 1 inch. Same applies to the third tier. You're going to join it here and you're going to hem it. So I'll be using bias tape to hem it. So ½ inch is okay for me. Okay, even if you're going to fold, you can just fold it little. Depending on what you want, you can add more than 1 to this third tier, depending on how you want to hem. So ½ inch is still okay for me to hem this part. So 1 inch is what I added. ½ inch to join it here and ½ inch for hemming. I hope this is clear. So by the time I added 1 inch to each of the figures here, so for the first tier now, what we have is 10 inches. For the second tier, we have 14 inches. And for the third tier, we have 19 inches. Okay, so I'm calling it tier. I hope that is what it is. That's 3 tiers or 3 layers. Should we call it layers? So whatever it is, I believe you understand. So these are the figures I'll be making use of for the length of each layer or for each tier. 10, 14, 19. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now let us move to the width. What measurement you need to have here. So this is it for the width. So I'm making use of the hip circumference because I want it to have gathers at the hip area here, at the waist area, sorry. So at this side, it also, have gathers, and all this part will be gathered too. So for the width, the hip circumference times 2, that is what I'm using for the first tier here. Okay, for the waist, the hip circumference times 2, and that is it. The hip circumference is 44 times 2, that is 88. Okay, so let's leave this for now. I will explain why I added 2, just like I explained how I added 1 inch here. So let's settle the main figures. So that solves it for the first tier, right? So for the second tier, you take hip circumference times 3. Okay, so I hope this is not too far. Hip circumference times 3, that's all you take for the second tier. And for the fourth tier, you take hip circumference times 4. So this style really take a lot of fabric. So if you're going to make gypsy skirt, most especially if you want it full, you have to get enough fabric. So I'm using 6 yards, and from this 6 yards, I'll get the skirt and still make the bodice, okay, because it will be a gown. So I hope this is clear. The first tier, hip circumference times 2. Second tier, hip circumference times 3. The third tier, hip circumference times 4. And these are the figures. So I added 2 inches. So this 2 inches is for zipper allowance. So yes, you might say, why 2 inches? 2 inches because you'll be cutting it while it is open, not on fold. Remember, if you're cutting on fold, we usually take 1 inch zipper allowance. But now the wrapper or the fabric will be wide open. So I'm adding 2 inches. So by the time I fold to sew, I'll sew by 1 inch here. By the time you fold it, you sew by 1 inch. I hope it's clear. So that is why I'm using 2 inches. So this 2 inches you're seeing here is the zipper allowance because it will be having zipper at the back. And remember, you stitch by the 1 inch up to the point where you have a zipper allowance. Up to the point where you have a zipper and you fix your zipper. Okay, so mine will be a gown, like I said. So join it to the body. So if yours will be just skirt, you also have to consider the band you'll be adding. So if you'll be adding band to your skirt, minus the length of the band before doing this. So my measurement starts from here. Okay, so if your total measurement is 40 and you're going to add band, let's say 2 inches band, minus the 2 inches from 40 before you do what you're having here. But for me, from this point to this point where I'll be joining to the bodice is 40. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Feel free to ask your question in the comment section below. So we have gotten this. So for the first tier, the width is 90, as I explained, and the length is 10. So I'm cutting 90 by 10. Okay, for the second tier, I'm cutting 134 by 14. For the third tier, I'm cutting 178 by 19. Now, let me show you how to go about cutting this on your fabric. So, this is my fabric. If I want to start measuring to cut, you might not see it clearly. That is, my camera might not be able to capture everything. So I would use this paper to illustrate. Okay, so now let's assume that this paper is my 6 inches, my 6 yards of African print. So let's say this side now is the 6 yards. Okay, this is the side that's measured. We measure in yards. While this side is the length, which usually measures 45. You know, the African print usually measures 45 here. So on this side where I have the 6 yards, I would now measure and cut out my fabric, starting with the longest one, which is the third tier, 178. So on my fabric, I'll open up my fabric and I'll measure 178. Let's say this is where I have it. So from the starting of my fabric, I'll measure 178. By the time I've done that, then I'll measure the width, 19 inches. So let's say this is where the 19 inches is. I'll measure it. Okay, let me use marker to be, you see it clearly. So let's say this is it. I'll measure, sorry, it's not straight. I'll measure it and cut it out. Then I'll measure the second one. By the time I have cut out this one, I'll measure the second one wherever I get to, which is 134. Okay, I have it 134. I'll measure it and cut it out. Then I'll measure the third one, which is 90, and cut it out. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So you would measure the first one from your fabric. Just open your fabric and you measure. You first of all measure the width. Measure the width and you cut it out. This is the first one, and maybe your fabric will now be like this. You then measure again the second one. You measure the second one again from wherever you stop this one, and you cut it out. And you cut it out. Sorry. Okay, so you have it. Then whatever, from what is left on the fabric, you measure the third one, you take the width, or the length, and you cut it out from your fabric. And you have the first, okay, so you have the first layer or the first tier, you have the second, and you have the third. Okay, so you know that this is just paper. Usually it will be longer than this. So you have it like this. Okay, so whatever is left on your fabric, you can cut your bodice, you can cut your band. If it is a skirt you're making, you will get that from the rest of your fabric. So that is how to cut it. So if you're making a gown, bear in mind that you're supposed to cut out the skirt part. Whenever you're making anything that has to do with a skirt and top or flare and all that, you cut the major part, the flare part, the skirt part before the body, because whatever is left, even if it is in pieces, can give you the top part. You can put it together to get the top part. So this is how you cut it. Now I'll go ahead and cut on my fabric, and you see how it is, and I'll show you how to finish it up. Okay, so let's do just that. So I have cut them out. This is the first tier. You can see it. See the length of the first tier. So I just folded it because my table is very long. My table cannot take up. So this is the first tier, which is 90 by 10, right? Then this is the second tier. You can see the length by 14. Then the width. Then the third one. This is the third one. I folded it. It's very, very long. Very, very long. So, and you can see the width, the length. Okay, so by the time I join all this, it will give me the full length of the skirt, which is 40 inches. So what I'll do now is to go ahead and make my gathers, but I want to use bias tape for the edges of these two. Okay, so by the time I use bias tape to pipe it, I will then make gathers. I will gather the top of this first one, then gather the top of this one where I will use bias tape, and gather the top of this third tier. I also use bias tape. So by the time I have used my bias tape and I've done the gathers, I would stitch on top. So you will see it. By the time you see it, you would understand what I did. Okay, so it will be on top, not joining it at the back. I would stitch on top so that the piped bias tape would be like a design. So let me go ahead and do it, and you will see what I mean. Then for the remaining fabric, I have cut out the bodice. So I have my bodice here. So you can see, like I said, it is 6 yards of African print. After cutting the gypsy skirt, this is the part I have used for my bodice. I will also be dropping a link to the video of how I cut this bodice. It's Princess Darts. Okay, so I'll be dropping the link to the video in case you don't know how to cut the Princess Dart, and mostly for a busty person. So this is bust 47 inches. Okay, this bust 47 inches. That is what I used here. So the person's bust circumference is 47 inches. So I have cut the Princess Dart and cut the wording for it and other things as well. That is the sleeve and the back from the remaining fabric. This is the sleeve. It's a basic sleeve. So I've placed the lining so that I can stitch it. It's a basic sleeve with flare. Okay, so I also have a video on this channel on how to cut your basic sleeve. Okay, you can see this, and I also have a video on how you can cut your sleeve. So I'll go ahead and couple up everything, but for now let's finish with the skirt. So for how I cut this bodice, I would drop the link in the description box so I can check it out. By the time I'm done with the skirt, you will see the skirt. Then later on, I would join the bodice to it to form the gown. So let me do just that. So this is it. So I just, after fixing the bias tape, what I did was then pleat it. Okay, I pleated this one on this, I pleated this one on this to match it up, because making a running stitch on it was actually taking a lot of time. It is very, very wide. As you can see, it is very, very wide. So the pleating also gave it that gypsy skirt look. And for this side, since this side is not so wide, I did my running stitch using my needle and thread so that I can have control over it to fit it to the bodice. Okay, and if it's band, you're going to add to fit it to the band. So I'll go ahead and join it to the bodice. Okay, so I said it is a gown. So this is the top parts. Okay, though I've not stitched it, I just placed it like this so that you can see what we have here. So I'll be dropping a video on how I made this top part, the Princess Dart bustier. So the video that will be coming up after uploading this one will be this one, so you can check it out. Okay, so this is it from my 6 yards of African print. I'm able to get this, the bodice, and even hair tie for it. Okay, then I'll still be decorating or designing the neckline using this pattern. So I'll just, I'll then finish this one up with lining and design the neckline like so. So you see the finished look of this dress. Okay, so that is it. So this is a gypsy skirt. So I hope you like this. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed. So I have joined it to the upper part, and you can see how beautiful it is. So I'll be leaving the link to this upper part in the description box so that I can check it out. Thanks for watching. Bye.